This is Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro. Today, rather than talking about a particular cryptid or paranormal phenomenon, we will be discussing a specific paranormal location, that being the Johnstown Masonic Temple in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Ooh, ooh. Back in September of 2024, we were a vendor at the WPA Cryptid and Supernatural Expo, which is being hosted by the Johnstown Masonic Temple in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. While we were there, we had the opportunity to learn a bit more about the building's haunted history, see some of its stunning architecture, and even talk to a handful of people who had had brushes with the unknown. We were given unprecedented access to the building, and Cryptid Creatures cameras investigated further. Here we are at the Johnstown Masonic Temple in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where they're hosting the 2024 Western Pennsylvania Cryptid and Supernatural Expo. The building itself also has a fascinating history, amazing architecture, and a paranormal side, as it is supposedly home to a few spirits of its own.
Okay. I don't know what the hell that was. Did you hear that too?
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that was.
While in the Egyptian room of the temple, we had the opportunity to interview Master Mason, manager of the building, and paranormal eyewitness, Pete Bobak.
The building cornerstone was set in 1931. It was originally built by the Masons for what it's used for today. And they got up to this room in about late 1930s, and it's been this way ever since. Paintings were put on the wall in the middle 40s, and it was touched up probably in the 70s. But all the plasterwork and everything's original. So it dates back to that time period where if you left here 60 years ago, it never changed.
We're in the Egyptian room. What's the significance of that for the masonry?
The Egyptian room goes back to the original builders. The pyramids, the sphinxes, and stuff like that that's 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years old, and they're still around today. So the Freemasons were the brickies or the stonemasons at the time for the cathedrals and all that. So they're taking it as things that they built 5,000 years ago still in existence. In the 1700s, it changed from building with your hands to build with your person, to build the best you could build and build your family and your community. But we still use the same working tools as the masons, the bricklayers.
I know this particular building has a little bit of a paranormal side to it. There's some hauntings. Could you tell us a bit about that?
There is a lot of stuff you hear. There used to be 6,000, 7,000 members in this building over the years. So in that period of time, there was a lot of things that happened in this building. I hear things, doors closing, the door knockers hitting once in a while. Sometimes you hear shadows. You hear people walking. There's nobody in the building a lot of times but me. And on the carpeted floor, you don't hear anything, but the other side, it's all slate. So you'll hear, and usually at that time, if anybody was up here at a meeting, they were always in dress shoes. So you could hear them walking. My wife had seen some things and heard some things, and my boy has heard some things and seen some things. And the paranormal people that are coming over, the Bump in the Night Society and some of the other ones, they've caught things on EVPs and this and that. So they're gonna do a reveal and see what really they caught.
Here we are in one of the back storage rooms on the 3rd floor of the lodge. I had heard that on one of your CCTV cameras, one of your security cameras, that you had caught some sort of apparition, perhaps, some sort of ghost. Could you tell us more about that?
I reviewed the cameras the next morning, but it was late at night. I can't remember the time. But we have a security camera down behind the refreshment stand or bar area, whatever you want to call it. And something come up over the bathroom wall and come across. It looked like off of one of the poppers, it looked like a streamer. And it just come across the bar and then just disappeared. And there was nobody in the building. There was no drafts, there was no nothing. And as soon as I saw it, I went out, looked all over, there was nothing there. And another time down in the basement, the basement level, the doors were unlocked, but the one door just opened and closed. And there was nobody there. So I don't know what's going on.
Here we are in the Masonic Library of the Lodge, and I came in here not only just because it's a cool library, but also they have preserved here a book from 1805. It's the oldest book they have in their collection, and I thought it was really interesting to investigate.
It's real hard to read because a lot has the backward S's and the weird, but it was copyrighted in 1805, and then somebody wrote on the next page within July 1806. Yeah, 1806. It's in pretty good shape for being that old. Yeah. This is a book. This book I'm taking out now is a book that went through the Johnstown Flood of 1889, and the flood was the worst natural disaster in American history. 2,209 people were killed right here. This is all flood mud. The last entry dates was about 2 weeks before the flood, and this is all flood mud. Which is, I like history. I like to be able to touch it. Here, go ahead, hold it. You're fine.
Man, that's cool. Where was it that it survived?
Before they moved to this building, they were at a building called Alma Hall, which was in downtown Johnstown. And they rented a room there. They began meeting there in 1880. And that building survived the flood. And all their records, a lot of their flood records are covered in mud. And then they moved up here in the 30s. It's just it's amazing that you'll be able to touch flood mud and history.
Yeah.
It's seen better days.
Yeah.
But haven't we all?
Reflecting on that experience with touching the book that survived the flood, frankly, it was amazing. There's this object, it's almost 200 years old. It survived one of the most devastating events on US soil in America's history. And I can touch it and feel the soil that's left on it from the event. It's like holding a piece of history, and it is. So to give a little more background on the event itself, the Johnstown Flood, here's an excerpt from our feature-length film, The Grand Tour, The Cryptids, Creatures, and Curiosities of the Keystone State, where we visited the Johnstown Flood National Memorial, about 14 miles outside of Johnstown. Also in the area is the Johnstown Flood National Memorial, about 10 miles east of Johnstown on US Route 219 in Cambria County. Here we are at the Johnstown Flood National Memorial, at the ruins of the South Fork Dam, about 14 miles outside of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The construction of this 931-foot-long, 72-foot-tall dam was completed in 1853. However, due to structural issues relating to its earthen composition, the dam was destined for disaster. On May 31st, 1889, the dam catastrophically failed, sending over 20 million tons of water toward Johnstown and completely destroying it. The flood killed over 2,200 people and was considered the most deadly flood in American history. Though this is not a necessarily paranormal site, it certainly is a tragic one. One of the speakers at the expo was the Bump in the Night Society, a paranormal research team based in Western Pennsylvania. While there, they conducted a paranormal investigation, seeing what exactly is at the temple, if there's anything at all. And the following day, we had the opportunity to interview two of the team members, Sean Bowman and Ryan O'Shea. How did you guys get involved in the paranormal research subject?
I was originally part of a group called Celestial Oddities Paraseekers. That was, I don't know, pre-COVID. Was involved with them for a while, started a group up. Actually, the way we started the group up, I used to do music, and my friend, he did music too. We came together, started up our own group. In 2020, we broke off. I formed Bump in the Night Society, and we've been doing it ever since.
I grew up in a house that was reputed to be haunted. I grew up in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Pittsburgh. And growing up, I always had these strange encounters that I never really knew what was happening. Hearing footsteps, having things move, just things I couldn't explain. Later in my life, I went to school for film, started working in the film industry. Then I brought that talents that I had gained with filming and camera work to the paranormal. I decided to join a team and see if I could figure out what I was actually experiencing in my youth growing up in that haunted house. So that's how I got involved with Bump in the Night Society. I do a lot of their filming and video work for them, and we love going out and investigating, trying to see if we can uncover the mysteries of what's happening.
Last night, you guys did an investigation of the place to see what you would get. What all did you encounter?
Last night, actually, one of the girls that was with us sent me a video this morning. We actually had one of the doors actually in the temple right behind us. When she was panning around, it was closed. When she came back around, the door was wide open. We've also had a lot of K2 hits and rope light stuff and audio and stuff like that.
So here at the Johnstown Masonic Temple, a couple of months ago, we were actually the first paranormal team to come in and investigate this location. This location that has been reputed to be haunted by the members, the Masons that are here from generation to generation have passed down stories of hauntings that they've encountered here, but that's been very whispered, very secretive, much like Masons have historically been. But much recently, they've started opening up this temple, and with that, opening up their secrets about the paranormal happenings that have been occurring here. So we investigated this 2 months ago, filmed a documentary that we're in the process of editing. We just released the trailer for that, showing off some of the evidence that we captured here. And then last night was a secondary investigation that we did here for the vendors at this event, really letting them experience this beautiful location for the first time themselves and also see what we could capture here. One thing that I found very interesting, especially in the Masonic lodges, the one right behind us and the also one across the way here, many times we're getting responses on our spirit box, which sweeps through radio frequencies, in which we are hearing words that the Masons that are investigating with us recognize as pertinent to their rituals, their secrets, their lore. The rest of us don't pick up on that because we don't know the Masonic tradition. And it's very interesting to have the Masons gather in a corner and whisper about what was happening, figure out what they can share with us publicly, and then come over and be like, that was relevant, but we can't say why. We experienced a lot of that, and I was shocked at that.
We also did a triple Estes last night too, and I had all three people talking to each other, which all seemed relevant too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, so in these SD sessions, the users are listening to a spirit box or some other device where they have headphones in, and they are listening to what could or could not be spirit voices in their ears. They are blindfolded, they have the headphones on, so they can't tell what's happening in the room. So there are people asking questions, other people that are doing the Estes method are shouting things out that they're hearing. And what was interesting about last night is the people who have headphones on and blindfolds on are having conversations with each other and saying things that are relevant, but they can't hear each other and they don't know what's happening in the room. So that was something that we need to go back and review later. There was a lot of interesting things said during that.
One of the girls that was with us too, she has like a childlike voice. I don't know what it was, but anytime she would talk, all three of them separately would tell her to shut up, like didn't want her to talk, which is interesting.
If these ghosts are indeed using terminology that is significant to Masons, what does that make you wonder about, like, who these people were? Like, were they Masons? Were they just picking up on things? What's your opinion on that?
One of the things we really tried to figure out is, both in the first investigation we did a couple of months ago and last night, was getting names. Names that we could cross-reference with the database here, that the Masons could look into their extensive archives and figure out if there was any relevance. There were some names, none are coming to the top of my head now, that we looked into, the Masons looked into after that first investigation, and did find some connections where it sounds like this name might be referring to this person who was relevant here, you know, in the 1940s or something like that. So we were trying to figure out, are these the spirits of Masons that were active here that had then passed? And this was such a beautiful building that during their life they were passionate about and spent so much time at, that in their death they wanted to be here and continue in that brotherhood. I think some of the Masons feel like that's exactly what's happening, that there's such a passion for this building. Their belongings are here in many cases. There's a whole museum of items that were owned by deceased Masons. That are they attached to those items? Are they attached to the energy of this building? Because there's certainly energy here. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about some of this stuff. There's a lot going on, that it could be deceased Masons that are here. Another theory out there is that could there be some kind of time loop, and that we are communicating with Masons that are still alive, perhaps in the 1960s, there's a break in the veil there where perhaps we're the ghost to them having a conversation. Any other theories from you?
Well, one of the things I thought was kind of ironic is my last name is Bowman, and one of their higher ranking people that's actually in that cabinet over there, his last name is Bowman. So maybe that helps them connect too, because I have a similar last name, you know, I don't know. And
speaking of the items that are here, just behind us over there is a book that survived the Johnstown Flood, with the records of the Masons of that time. The Masons that lived in Johnstown, certainly many of them perished in that flood and were very active in the aftermath of that. The names that are in that book, many of them didn't survive, but that book did, and it is here tying this location to that world-renowned tragedy, and I think that that's incredible.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that there's a lot of energy associated with this area because of what happened. What were some personal experiences last night, like sensations or thoughts or whatever? Just personal.
I don't know, sometimes you can kind of feel something when you go in a room that just feels off. Like I know a lot of people say, like we did, last time we were here, we did an experiment up in the museum, which Mikey, who's another lead member of our team, he pumps a bunch of EMF into the room. And between all the electricity, and I guess just because it was so hot too, like that whole room just became really stuffy, and like you could just tell that room was like really bad. But they were saying just recently, Wednesday I think, they saged that room because they said it's still is real heavy in that room, just feels off, people don't want to go in there. So feeling wise, yeah, like that's definitely how I felt up there when I was here the first time.
So we had heard from the Masons when we did our first walk through this building, our first time here, that there of course have been reports of activity. That's why they called us to come in the first place, because the Masons were experiencing things. But after our first investigation, we've heard many reports that even more things were kicked up. They've seen a priest in one of the bathrooms.
Right here, actually,
Yeah, there was water faucets turning on and off. There was mysterious, I hesitate to call it an orb because it wasn't, but mysterious light shapes seen by the bar downstairs. Very interesting stuff that was captured here after our investigation. So it seems that us being here and trying to make contact with whatever may or may not be here, maybe building the energy here, and it's now with all of the vendors, the speakers, the people that are enthusiasts about the paranormal and cryptids that are here this weekend, I am very excited to follow up in a couple of weeks with the Masons that we've now become close friends with to ask them, what are you experiencing now? This is certainly not our last time here. We'll be back, and I think the the excitement here, the energy here is growing, and we want to find out what we can learn more. You asked about specific experiences. I'm still waiting to hear, that quality disembodied voice or see that quality visual apparition. That hasn't happened to me here yet, but I can tell you I've had feelings like sudden air changes, sudden temperature changes, just overwhelming intuitions that I have that I wouldn't call myself a psychic or a medium. I certainly don't think I have those abilities, but I've sensed things in this building that I can't explain.
Do you have any specific plans for when you want to come back or do anything further?
So a couple of things. We are doing the documentary, as I said. The trailer is now released. Once that is done, we would love to come back here and do a screening of that documentary here in the Johnstown area, if not here in the building. I think it makes sense for this to be the place where that debut takes place, not only for the Masons to come and see it and the Johnstown community to come and see it, but also maybe the entities that are here can get a sense of what they had the chance to participate in as well. Masonic temples are beautiful locations that have been sealed off for decades and centuries before that, and now they are starting to open up. And many of them have their own haunting legends. And if we can combine those two together by bringing the public in to experience the paranormal, but also to admire these great buildings that exist here that many people drive by or walk by and don't realize what's behind these doors, I think people should see what's happening here and have a chance to experience this for themselves. We've connected with a whole network of Masons that are interested in the paranormal and have their own paranormal stories of their locations. So it could be quite likely that we are going to many more Masonic temples in the future to investigate what's happening there. And also see connections between the locations. Are the words that are relevant here also going to trigger things at those other locations? We have a lot of experiments to try.
Aside from here and the temples, do you have any plans? Are you doing anything right now? Is there anything that a viewer might be interested in looking into?
A big event that we do typically every year is Parapsychon at the Ohio State Reformatory. If anyone hasn't been there, it's in Mansfield, Ohio, a beautiful old historic prison. Whether you like history, whether you like architecture, whether you like photography, whether you like the paranormal, or film history, because it was the filming location of The Shawshank Redemption and many other films, it's a wonderful building to check out. We are actually the media sponsors for that event, so we run hundreds of feet of cable throughout that building, live streaming security cameras and our own investigations throughout the weekend. We'll be there again next year. Typically it takes place the second or third week in May.
So it's May 17th through the 19th, I'm pretty sure.
So we're excited about that again. It's always a great time. And for anyone who wants to learn more about the events that we do have that are publics or follow along with our live streamed investigations, which we often do, you can feel free to follow us on TikTok and Facebook primarily at Bump in the Night Society. We're also active on YouTube as well. And on the live stream investigations, that's a great way to engage because so many times we go to these places where people, because of geography or finances or whatever the reason may be, they can't come out and join us in person at an event. But we often live stream our investigations online so that people can not only watch what we are doing, but actively participate, comment their own questions, comment what they are seeing and hearing and feeling, ask things, and they can be active participants in the investigation as well. So if anyone wants to join into that, feel free to follow us.
One thing more about Paracycling, they have Hearse Mania too, which there's dozens of hearses that show up to, and that's another really cool event and aspect of the whole event.
If you were to give advice to an up-and-coming paranormal researcher, what would you say?
So I am a skeptic, and I know that a lot of people look down on that point of view in the paranormal community, but I think you have to keep an open mind regardless of what your prior beliefs are. So I want to be proven wrong. There are so many people that jump into the paranormal believing everything they hear, thinking everything's a ghost, not having that critical thinking approach, and I think you need to come at the paranormal with a skeptical mindset. Try to find logical explanations for what you experience, and the things that you can't find logical explanations for, maybe that's some quality evidence. But make sure you don't end up fooling yourself in this process. Try to find the facts and keep reason at the top of mind.
Another thing too is, do you want to be solo or do you want a team? Solo, you could do cemeteries, maybe houses, stuff like that. But if you want to do commercial properties, they're expensive. So it's easier when you have a team. I would look into like your local areas and see if there's teams out there to be able to get involved in.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for the interview, taking time out of your day to talk to us. Check out the Bump in the Night Society, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's Krampus.
Krampus.
Yeah.
Nice. What is it?
Krampus, it's a demonic character from Germanic folklore. It's kind of an anti-Santa. It punishes bad children rather than giving gifts to good ones. In recent years, Freemasonry has become a sort of scapegoat for various conspiracy theories relating to shadow governments and New World Order type world domination plots and even lizard people. But based on my own personal knowledge and experience with it, as I have family who are Masons, I've never noticed any nefarious intentions behind any of it. All of the local lodges, which are known as Blue Lodges, they only answer to the Grand Lodge of their respective state. That is as high as it goes. There is no recognized national or international organization that these local lodges answer to. Freemasonry itself goes all the way back to about the 14th century during the Dark Ages, whenever guilds of stonemasons began to form across Europe who were able to transcend their serfdom and work from job site to job site wherever they really felt like, unlike most of the working class at the time who had to live under the servitude of a ruler or a duke or a landowner. By the early 1700s, these Masonic lodges had become less operative stonemason guilds and more of fraternities for men of all backgrounds to join together and better themselves and their communities in the spirit of virtue and charity. The lodges themselves are meant to be sort of classless. Of course, there are hierarchies that exist within the lodges themselves, but all of the members are seen as equals, no matter their socioeconomic status, their race, their religion, their political ideology, whatever, it doesn't matter. All of them are on the level, as it is referred to. Many of the parables and teachings of Freemasonry are based on the story of the construction of King Solomon's temple, and some even argue that the traditions go all the way back to the building of the pyramids of Giza. A lot of their secret phrases and hand grips and handshakes and other symbolism are really based in tradition rather than any sort of hidden agenda. A lot of it goes back to the 14th century Masonic guilds, the stonemasons, who wanted a way to recognize one another on the job site, as not all stonemasons were of the Freemasonry. So, in order to do this, they developed handshakes and phrases that they would be able to recognize each other with. But whatever the case, as the Masons say, the secret is that there is no secret. That much of it is just tradition, and that Freemasonry has simply been a very, very influential aspect of human and especially American history. As my dad says, Freemasonry is meant to make good men better. And just an interesting statistic, Masons give over $1 million a day to charities all across the world, which personally I think is pretty cool. So, is Freemasonry an organization that is just hell-bent on world domination? Or is it really an altruistic group of men who wish to better themselves and their communities? I would say we may never know, usually, but the answer may just be to join a lodge and find out. Thanks for watching, and to watch our previous and future episodes, visit the Cryptid Creatures YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and tell your friends. Cryptid Creatures is brought to you by the Kitty Petters Union, Cobble Sound Recording Company, and my dad's show, Meet the Pressers. This is Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro, signing off.